And then I will send you the material for the lecture. For those who was too late for this journey. Okay. Now, let's start. Here is our topic for today. We start from the beginning, from the particular things. And today we start to study psychopathology, and particularly we will talk about the disorders of perception. First of all, psychopathology. That will be the topic of our 9 approximately lectures, and that is a part of psychiatry. But as you see downstairs below, not only the part of psychiatry here, also psychopathology is a part of is a subject which studied by psychologists, clinical psychologists, neuroscientists, and all other specialties which are somehow connected with mental health. So psychopathology, what is that about? In the definition, you can see that it's a study of mental illness in their manifestation or something like that. But the main things and most simple things, it's here. It's studying the signs and symptoms of mental disorder. This is the main things. They study the symptoms of mental disorder. Well, there are 2 approaches here. And also it's a loud over here. Now it's not so. Psychopathology, it's about, yes, it's about symptoms and signs. Psychiatrists usually prefer to use so-called descriptive approach to the psychopathology. So what do? They usually, we are concentrated on observing and finding and detecting some signs of mental disorder. To detect, we just see the symptoms, we just detect it, we fix it, and then we make a conclusion. This is the symptoms of schizophrenia, this is the symptoms of mania, depression, or etc. So for the psychiatrist, it's most important to find these symptoms and to classify these symptoms, to add these symptoms to discover a particular disorder through their set of symptoms. So it's called phenomenological approach in psychopathology. We just describe what we see. For the psychologist or for the psychotherapist, yes, they also see the symptom. They also see that something is wrong with a person, with his behavior, with his experiences, as you see, with his behavior, experiences. Something is impaired. But what is important for these professionals is why it happens. What is the basis? Why do these persons experience these symptoms? For example, psychotherapist can see a depressive mood, sad mood. A person is sad, client is sad, but it's only the upper part of an iceberg. The basis of this depression can be different. While, for example, this person is tired because he got irrational logos or irrational motivation all his life, for example, to dominate all of everyone who is around him. Or he is a perfectionist, for example. But that's impossible to be successful on this way, and he become tired, and now he feels depressed. And psychologists will work with the perfectionism, with all these tendencies, with all these past or the experience which make this person to make a decision, I should dominate all over the others. That's why I will have a safe life. So to change these things, first of all, before to change these things, psychologist or psychotherapist search for why this person experienced depression. Actually, psychiatrists also can do the same, but as I told you, the aim of psychiatry is to find diagnosis, disease, and to prescribe treatment for the disorder. That's about psychopathology, and we will start to study psychopathology from studying of disorders of perception. Before we come to that, we have to discuss what is that, disorders of perception. Before we have to discuss what is a normal perception, what is that, how does it work, and we will see some basic features, basic properties of the perception, which will help us to distinguish normal function of psychic from abnormal. So here you see the definition. Intuitively you can say what is the perception, but you see, perception is the recognition and interpretation of a sensory information. Not only recognition, but interpretation. They both go together. We only mechanically can separate recognition and interpretation one from another. Only mechanically. Why and how? Well, for example, if I look outside right now, I can see my screen, but actually what my eyes can see. My eyes can see a white light with some numbers of black lines or curved lines, some red lines, some red triangles. So I can see that. But I also recognize that I see a screen of my laptop right in front of me. I can look at the window and I can see the car. Actually, it's an object of a silver color, big object, but I recognize it at once from the second. At the same time that I recognize it as the car. So that's a perception. Perception is that how we take in outside information, or how do we perceive internal information, and how do we recognize it at the same moment. For example, you can feel something unpleasant from your upper part of the abdomen, from the epigastrical part, and you understand that it's a hunger, or it can be an anxiety, different things. So you percept means see and distinguish. Can hear, again, to hear and distinguish that. That's a perception. How do we perceive external, internal world, and how do we percept? At the same time, we can percept our memories, we can percept our past. So these three things is the information which coming into our mind. That's a perception. And now let's get to the point. Key points of the perception, key features of the perception. That's a crucial features which every doctor have to know. And let's discuss it one by one. Now, we do not always see the same things. Yes, people can see things in a different manner, and the same person, two people can see the same object in a different manner, make a different conclusion about the same event, object, words, theories, or something like that. So it says, in general, our perception is subjective. Subjective means unique. Subjective means something which occur only in your personality, because your personality differ from any other personality. There is no equal and the same other personality in all this world, because we are alive people. So we perceive things in a different ways. What can be an example over here? I don't know. Anything can be different. Well, you see the big car. Maybe you perceive it as a great thing. Yes, but the owner of this car can perceive his own big car and as an object of a burnout, is the object which have to take care, we have to pay money for that, so he is tired from this car. This is a really exhausting object for him. For you, that's a nice and a brilliant car. Girls, then they travel in the Dordogne or somewhere else, or in your region, they can just miss and pay no attention. It's no meaning in this shop. No meaning, and this shop sells an equipment for the fishing. But for the men's, that can be very important things. But even sometimes you can ask a lady, where is the fishing department in our Dordogne or something? She don't know because she never mentioned it, because she never paid attention. Same things if you ask men where to buy clothes or something which is related to the housing, he don't know where to, because subjectively he was in these areas, but that's not important for him. Same for the doctor. Doctor-patient relationship. And why do we subjective in our perception? Because as it says here, we are set up to have different perception because of past experience, mostly, of course, of past experience, culture, values. Culture, values, we also can say we collect our culture and we collect our values in our past. We become an object for them. So now, sorry me for the second. I will, I have a, sorry. So, past experience is very important. That's why our past experience make our perception different. And the conclusion, it is very important to accept that other person can has his own perception of an object, even if it's really strange, if it's really different from yours. But this is a doctor have to accept, and it is recommended. I would strictly recommend for you to be very tolerant for these differences in the perception of yours and of your patient. For example, you're the cardiologist and you know that these drugs is vitally necessary for your patient all the day, to take it all the day, otherwise he will die. Yes, it's your perception of this drug. But for your patient, what can be? For your patient, he can think that this drug is a very heavy duty for him to drink, very heavy duty to think, to have this side effect, to live with the side effects, experience them. And it's just a piece of a chemistry. It's just a substance which somebody else tried to force him to buy and to consume it. And it's a very unpleasant sign of his weakness, of that he is handicapped, that he is grumpy, something like that. For him, this pill is not a saving, not a blessing, not a good scientific remedy to recover, to live better. For him, it's an obstacle between him and his previous past and normal life, which he wants to keep longer. So these are the key features of the perception. So sometimes don't be surprised if your patient, client, friend, or somebody else can see really strange things around which you do not see, which you think do not exist. Plus, you can even have a quite opposite opinion, so be tolerant, and that can be really helpful. And that can be, these differences is not just the signs that he has a mental disorder. That's a picture, you see? Same object, people can see in a different way. For example, first two can be mathematician or physics, and the last one in a row is obviously a biologist or doctor, because of their experience, because their habits. Now go to the pathology, to the exact pathological things. Well, what do we see? Here we start from the general classification of the disorders of perception, and we have two cases: sensory distortions and sensory deceptions. Two main branches of the disorders of the perception. Distortions means we got a real object. A patient have a real object to perceive, but this object is distorted. That's a keyword. Sensory deceptions mean lie to yourself, means new perception, means that there is no, it will be, let's say, a new, yes, new perception, new object, and there is no external stimulus. Deception. Okay? I hope that's clear. And let's move on. Types of sensory distortions. Well, sensory distortions can, the reality, real objects, usually real object, people, or even events, can be perceived in another, with another quality or with another intensities. And here you see just a list of them. We will follow one by one for them. So sensory distortions involve this stuff. Something being perceived with changed qualities. Now, changes in intensity of the object. We talk here about hyper or hypoesthesia. Hyperesthesia. In English, in British, it's esthesia. Aesthesia, sorry. In American, more easier way, esthesia. Hyperesthesia. And see, here, everything depends on the threshold of the perception. In this case, it's a lowering of the perception. Lowering of the threshold of the perception. What does it mean? All the stimuli, before they enter in our brain, have to be strong enough to initiate excitation in our brain, yes? So the power of these stimulus have to overcome the threshold of our perception. If the power or intensity of the signal is slow, we're not gonna recognize these symptoms. It will be lower, it will be weaker than our threshold of the perception. See that in anxiety and in depression, the threshold of the perception can be lowered. So In an anxiety, a person can be so anxious, so that even the lowest sounds, which remind him the signal about danger, will be perceived as the very, very, very intensive. Imagine yourself the pictures of animals, so they are at their field and they can hear a very slight sound of cracking somewhere in a distance, and they run away. That can be anything, it can be just the wind, but they perceive it very easily, especially when they are in an alert state. Let me correct a bit a sound. Now it's quiet, okay. So, anxiety, depression, or alcohol hangover. In alcohol hangover, any sounds will be too loud. Any touch sometimes will be too loud. Any taste sometimes can be too intensive, even so intensive to provoke the amities, to provoke the reflex to throw out all the stuff from the stomach. Okay, so it's a hyperesthesia. Also, when can we see the hyperesthesia? In a hypomanic patient? Hypomanic patients, or there's a patient who got an increased mood and they experience everything so vividly, so intensively, or as you see in LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. This substance is a stimulating substance. So much stimulated that any stimulus, even just regular, irrelevant, boring stimulus, but then people take drugs, they can see colors much more interesting and brighter than it is. For example, they can hear the music, and that's the same music that they already heard a lot of times before, but this time it's an amazingly beautiful. Again, because of hyperesthesia. That's a hyperesthesia, and let's move smoothly, quickly to the hypoesthesia or hypoesthesia. Here we have hyperacusis in delirium, hyperacusis in depressions, etc. So in hypoesthesia, the threshold of the perception is heightened, is very high, so only very strong stimuli can pass through it. Usual stimuli is not available for the perception of the person. If a person, for example, really depressed, yes, deeply depressed, he is so concentrated on his own suffering, on his own condition, so he feels so many pain inside of him that even he cannot hear that somebody enter his room, maybe somebody who he would be very happy to see, to feel, to meet, but not now, not in a depression. In the depression, it looks like nothing happens. The oldest friends gets back from the study. 5 years he haven't seen these best friends, but no, not interested. Looks like not interested, no reaction, low threshold, or too high threshold, and the hypoesthesia. In depression, as the same digestion, things like no taste, nothing is tasty. Well, people eat meal like it is kind of plastic with no taste, low taste. Oh, well, they do distinguish apple from, I don't know, from pepper. Yes, they can distinguish it, but almost no differences for them because of the hypoesthesia. Now, changes in quality. So the quality of the object can be really changed or distorted. Here we see a color. Yellow, green, red. So object can be mostly dominated. Yellow, we call it xanthopsia. Green one, chloropsia, and everything can be perceived as red. Yes, in this case, you can strictly think it's an intoxication. Intoxication usually with medicine. Here you can see the example. These are an example of old type of drugs, usually by plant of a plant origin, but still now we have a derivant from these drugs, and these derivants also can cause such type of experiences, but luckily not so often, because that's a good drug and they tested and they have a low side effect profile. Another things, changes in the quality, we have to speak about a bit more, because it's more often in a clinical practice of the doctor. The realization. Realizations means the ability to understand the reality. Yes, that's obvious. I hope for you, I will stress it. Now, realization. That's ability to understand reality. Derealizations means the reality. De mean something was being changed. Something is not as it was before. Derealization. So reality changing. Something. In the example, you can see that everything thoughts perceived as unreal. If a person have a mood that somebody is going to kill him, or if a person full of fears that somebody is following him, looking for him, or planning to do something with him, his perception will be changed. For example, he can see neutral people who just pass him by, but just throw a small look at him. Wow, he is planning something against me. They sent him to spy on me. It's a one type of realization. That's a type of realization which usually psychiatrists see or deal with. But general practitioner will have most of the cases of the derealization due to anxiety. So in an anxiety, in a constant feeling of fear, reality, object in the reality, they are perceived like mute, blur, different, not so intensive. So I think every one of you already maybe experienced these kind of feelings. So then you're anxious, then you're really scared. Other object, other picture around you becoming not so relevant, not so important. And that's why it is blurred, foggy, and unclear. Remember yourself before enter to the exam room. You've been concentrated on your inner things, and it looks like everybody around of you, they don't exist. Looks like you cannot see them. You see the door, you see the enter, you see the piece of paper with a question, we call it billet. So you see that, and that's it. Also, you can see the examiner who is following, who is observing you. Especially, you can see him when you want to cheat, but you don't see anything else. That's a derealization. And also, then you're really scared, or you depressive. Not you, a person is depressive. They experience depersonalization. They say like this, same things, like reality has been changed, and I perceive as myself as a person who has been changed. Like I don't feel love as strong as pleasant as I felt before. For example, I'm in a depression, and again I've been visited by my children, wife, beloved one, and no reaction, no instant and the same as it was before answer for the external environment. Like I'm a dull inside of me, like my feelings is changed, like my perception. So I am a changed person. Depersonalization. Depersonalization and derealization usually goes together. And again, most common cases, common causes of the derealization. It's a depression and anxiety. Well, of course, it can be a schizophrenia, it can be mania, it can be drug intoxication, but most common in the practice of the general practitioner, it's due to anxiety, due to emotional problem. The problem is that these symptoms usually a patient report only in a very severe cases to the psychiatrist. They don't think that they have to inform their general practitioner about that, but I think in the future, patient will be perceived general practitioner as also a person who is capable and who got skills enough to treat their mental health, to improve their mental health. Now, changes in spatial form, we call them dysmegalopsia. Again, short reminding of the Greek terms. Dys mean distorted, changed, something like that. So something is not as it should be, it is changed. Megalo means big, or change it in the form. Opsia from Greek language means to see. Opsia, optical nerves, or morphopsia. So it's like a process of seeing, observing of something. We have cases of micropsia. Objects are smaller than they should be, and macropsia or megalopsia, the same. The objects are bigger than they are. When can we see micropsia and megalopsia? Usually in a case of intoxication or in a case of the brain damage. Not schizophrenia, not other severe mental disorder, but usually we talk here about some problems in a brain tissue, like intoxication or epileptic seizure. And one of the most interesting but not so often case of this megalopsia is this, yes, metamorphopsia. I will take O, I will put O in two triangles. So this changed meta. Meta means it's constantly changing in a shape that we observe. So person see that the object are in a process of changing their form. For example, usually they either growing up or make a slowing. For example, this metamorphopsia, then I sit at the can happens with a person who take cannabis or ganja. He's sitting on the chair, but then he's looking at the chair, and his chair become to grow up with dramatic speed to become heightened. It goes to the sky, and between him, who is he sitting on the chair, and the floor, there is a 5 meters of a distance. So a person can easily fall down and fall down to the floor and die because of it, and he screamed and asked for help. Or in some epileptic things, again, and in the intoxication, a person can sit in front of you and he experiences that his body growing up, his part of the body, his head, for example, is growing up, and he can become so scared that he grasps his head and try to hold it because he thinks it is so big that it will fall down and right now and instantly, and it will break his neck automatically because too heavy. So that's a dysmetamorphopsia. Distortion of experience of time, and then that's should be easy for you to understand, that a case, then a person thinks the time is run so fast or the time is coming so easy. For example, in depression, early in the morning, and classically early in the morning, it's most heaviest in terms of mood time, most sad, most painful time of the day for the person who suffers from depression. And by that moment, in that part of the day, time is moving very slowly for him, and he cannot wait until the evening will come, because in the evening he will feel a relief. Or you're really anxious, and for example, you got a very difficult patient, and you called an ambulance because you walk in, not an emergency ward, but these patients need emergency help, and you wait until ambulance will arrive to you, and you wait for 5 minutes maybe. The doctor, they do understand that they're calling them, that somebody needs some help, but these 5 minutes will be perceived like a universe, like few hours while you will be waiting for the call. So patients who suffer from emotional disorder perceive time in very distortion time. So here, sensory deceptions, that's a second part of our lecture. Now I will give you a 5 minutes of break, okay? And after 5 minutes, we will get back to the lecture. And while the time, I will check all the messages. I think somebody who is running to the lecture messaged me right now too many times. I will read it and try to answer. Okay, 5 minutes. Actually, 4 minutes and 48, 47, 46 seconds left. See you.
అమ్మో లాల్గాడ్ అయితే వింటానే ఉండు.
భయ్యా ఏంది ఈడు పైన ఆప్షన్ పెట్టిండ్రా వాడు.
ఎవరు
మీడే
దేనికి
రికార్డింగ్ పెట్టిండు. అదే
రిజిస్టర్లు తెచ్చుకున్నాము. బిస్కెట్లు తెచ్చుకున్నాం.
నువ్వు తెచ్చుకుంటావురా రిజిస్టర్లు?
ఎవడాడు? కార్తీక్ ఆడు.
అదే కార్తీక్ గాడు.
ఎట్లాగా మరి? లేకపోతే
ఏ ఫ్లైట్ భయ్యా?
హలో సైలెంట్ రా.
హలో 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 హలో
ఎవడు రాడు?
హలో 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 హలో
कितना चलेगा?
ओसड़ी को चुप हो जाओ सबके सब.
दिमाग खराब है क्या?
साइलेंट रा.
अरे चुप हो जाओ यार. 11 ग्रुप चुप हो जाओ.
इल्ले पोइंगडे कुंडी नालादा कुंडीदा
తిరుగుతున్నారు అందరూ కలిసి.
कहाँ से हो भाई? हो सारे साउथ वाले दिख रहे हो मुझे तो.
వాడి బాధ ఏందంట?
సాదిక్ గాడు చూడు, బాహుబలి పట్టేసుకొని కూర్చున్నాడు అనక.
సాదిక్ ల్యాప్టాప్
लैब है.
समझ रहे हो?
వస్తుంది జయించాలి అర్థం అంతే కూర్చుంది. వీడు సైకాలజిస్ట్ కూడా ఎలాగో చెప్తున్నాడు ఇంకేదో ఉన్నట్టు.
అది కాదు భయ్యా, అందరూ కొత్త కొత్తలో ఉన్నారు కదా ఇంట్లో.
అది అసలు ఏంది కొత్త కొత్తలో ఉన్నారు? అదే అర్థం కావట్లే.
ఉన్నారు దీంట్లో.
యూనివర్సిటీ
లవ్
మీది ఏ యూనివర్సిటీ ఇప్పుడు మాట్లాడే?
MIT.
అరే ఇది మన యూనివర్సిటీ కాదురా రే.
మంది కాదా?
మంది కాదనుకుంటారా?
ఎవరు?
ఎవరెవరు ఉన్నారు దీంట్లో?
అదే కదా.
ఏ అందరు ఐఎస్ఐమే భయ్యా.
ఎవరు భయ్యా
Direct
బ్లూ
కూడా ఉన్నారు
వాళ్ళు
ఇందులో.
ఎవరు?
Direct కూడా
ఎవరు?
ఆ? ఇక్కడ
ఇప్పుడు
వేరే
ఎవరో
ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్
కొత్తవాడు
ఎవరు
అంట,
ఉన్నారు?
శామ్యుయల్ సందీప్ అంట.
ఎవడాడు?
పేరు మార్చుకున్నా సందీప్ గా.
కాదు వాడు బిఎస్ సందీప్ అని పెట్టిండాడు.
ఇందాక శామ్యుయల్ సందీప్ అంట.
కాదు ఏమో వేరే ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్ వాళ్ళు ఏమి ఉండరు దీంట్లో, తెలుసుంటారు మన వాళ్ళే ఉంటారు.
అరే మన యూనివర్సిటీ వాళ్ళు ఎవరు లేరురా ఈడ?
కొత్తనే చాలా ఉన్నాయి అందుకే
కొత్త నేను చూసిన చాలా, నాకు కొత్త నుంచి నాకు
వీళ్ళ మొహాలు కూడా చూసినట్టే లేదు.
అవును
భార్గవ్
కాదు అవును 50 గ్రూప్స్ మనకి ఎలా టచ్. అదే
అరే ఆ పెట్టిన లింక్ లో కూడా వేరేది ఉంది చూడండి రా, పేరు ఆల్మటీ అనేది ఉంది.
జర్మనీ కూడా ఉంది రే.
అందరు జాయిన్ అయిపోతున్నారు.
సైలెంట్ రా.
ఎవడయ్యా వాడు గాలాడు.
అది అని హుస్సేన్ ఉన్నాడు, వస్తాడు ఆగండి 2 రోజుల్లో
పెడతాడు.
పెద్దది 17 పడింది టైం సైడ్ వాడ.
అదే కదా
అన్న చక్రవర్తి బాయ్ ఫ్రెండ్ రా.
ఎవడు రాయుడు?
ఎవడో
మన యూనివర్సిటీ కాదు వీళ్ళు.
బయటకు వచ్చేసింది.
నేను బయటకు వచ్చింది ఇది మళ్ళా
40 minutes అయిపోయినట్టుంది.
లేదురా
బయటికి రాలే.
నాకు వచ్చేసింది
నా వీడియో బయటకు వచ్చేసింది.
వీడియో బయట వచ్చేసింది బే.
మీ ల్యాప్టాప్ లో చేస్తున్నా నేను వాడు.
ఏంది తామస్ కూడా పెట్టినాడు
ఫోన్ లో
స్టార్ట్ అయింది.
Okay, 5 minutes past.
అడగండి రా.
Shiva Surya Silvan Nathan Bhuvanobat. I can read, but I cannot understand that. So, try to communicate in English. No. Otherwise, it looks like you planning some plot against me. And those who do these, I would be recommended as the potential victims for our for other teachers. That's a joke. But at least it's unpolite. Let's move on. Where we stopped. Sensory deception. Sensory deception, we can see 2 of them: illusions and hallucinations. Illusions, what important here, that's the real external object exists. And here it is without hallucination, or without. In illusions, again, there is an object, but it is distorted. It is being perceived like something else, but not it is. Like a real, for example, you can say a bush. The bush is really exists, but you can see not a bush. You can see a dinosaur. But the bush is a stimulus which you perceive or misinterpret really wrongly. Hallucinations, no bush, nothing. Well, in my room, there is nobody close to me to my room, but I can see, if I will see somebody right in front of me, that's a hallucination because nobody is here. Okay? So let's move one by one. Illusions. And we have 3 types of illusions. That can be really important and relevant to the practice of the general practitioner. Completion illusions, or illusions of completions. So this is wrong or misreading of newspapers, misreading of events, especially then you missed something. Well, you was distracted, or you have no complete picture in front of you. There are a lot of gaps in the information. that you have. So our psychic is made in such a manner that our psychic hate the gaps. Our psychic like a completed full picture. And our psychic build up for you, your psychic and my psychic will be build up a picture for us, a completed picture, by installing in the gap something which can be useful, can be relevant, but something it is not. So we complete our gaps, we fulfill our gaps as we wish. Sometimes, especially in the doctor profession, that can be harmful. For example, you got a patient, you examine him, and this patient is, well, okay, it's your relative, you talk to him to the phone, it's a self-isolation period, and you cannot meet him face to face, and he says, you know, I have a fever. And then you ask him about some other symptoms of COVID, that's it. You don't ask him about something else, and you prescribe him, go run and take directly anticoagulants, for example, therapy, because it will save your life, etc., etc. So you absolutely sure that he has a COVID. But maybe he just he have just a relapse of his chronic nephritis, pyelonephritis, for example. But you didn't ask about it, but you almost sure that you asked it and you got a negative answer, so you completed the gap. You had a friend, and you know, what do you know? Yesterday he had a birthday party, and today he missed first half of the day. He's not present. What? He fulfilled the gap. He was so drunk that he is not here. No, maybe he just accompanied his mother to the visit for the doctor in the morning. That's it. But we already completed the gaps. We already got our conclusions. So be careful. Then you have no enough information. Of course, it's a normal thing to fulfill the gaps. It's impossible. But if it is a really important information, you have to be careful, especially then you at your professional position, then you performing your professional duties as the doctor. Clarify the information and then make a conclusion, not before. Okay, so that's an illusion of completion. Next, most important illusion is the illusion of so-called affect illusion. And now we have words affect. That's what is affect. Affect is a particular mood state. Affect actually is nothing else, just emotions. It's another name for emotions, but emotion in affect condition, it's a very, very strong condition. Emotion. Then we say, I am in affect now, means I experience a very strong emotion right now. Actually, we never say like that, only external observer, professional can say, but the person who experiences, for example, extreme fear, like in a delirium. Delirium, it's here, that's a condition in which a person suffers from the brain edema. So hypoxia, anxiety, fear, that's it. So in fear, a person just can sit in a neighbor room. And if he can see somebody in other rooms and these people talk about something, if this person is really scared, he can start to think, he can perceive like they're talking about me. They want to do something against me, they dangerous, they can harmful, for example, they want to beat me. He can get a lot of misperception, but that was just a simple conversation about something else which is not relevant for these patients, but this patient can think that they're talking about me. Or another affect illusion, as I told you, then you're scared, you pass through the park in our Bishkek, for example. It's 11 o'clock, you're alone. What can you see? That somebody is following you, somebody is chasing you. If you look more carefully, you will see that this is just a bush. That's not an idiot, somebody who want to attack. It's not a robber. It just, you misperceive this bush as somebody, as a dangerous object because you was really scared. So affect illusions. People misinterpret reality accordingly with the content of their emotions. If they're happy, for example, if they have a mania, if they took a drug, they can perceive ordinal object like a very wonderful, nice and beautiful. For example, a person went to the disco bar or somewhere. He heard this music a lot of time, but if he have a drugs, this music is brilliant, amazing. It sounds like he never heard it before, and only right now he realized how beautiful this music is, how beautiful this composer or this group band, something like that. So, affect is crucial, is the main guy who make a decision, who interpret the reality. Okay. Well, that's an affect illusions. In psychiatry, in a medicine, I think that will be the most often frequent type of delusions, of illusions for you. Pareidolia. Pareidolia, it's a Greek word, yes, type of illusions which been created by fantasy, by the vivid ability to fantasize, and actually without a force. So fantasy, walking without the permission, is just activate images in an object which is neutral for you. For example, pareidolia. Then you look at the clouds, or you look at the fire, or you look at the carpet, or you look at the picture of a wallpaper. You can see not only the clouds, you can see not only the fire or wallpaper, you can see some images, some, I don't know, some pictures. If you like a dog, you can see the dog in the clouds. If you hate the dog and like a cat, you can see many cats over there. If you fall in love, you can see the face of your beloved one. If you're sad, you can see the tears, how skies are crying, etc., etc. So, depending on the mood, as we told before, but very, very vivid imagination turns on non-existent picture in the mind of the patient. Then he look at some object which have now a simple or have which, for example, like a carpet, consists of a difficult elements. That's mostly about artists, about painters, about people of art, creative persons with a fantasy. Nothing wrong in pareidolia in this case, but when pareidolia can be wrong, for example, in an intoxication in childs. If a child lay in his bed, look at the carpet, and calling his mother and telling her mother, look, there is they showing me the movie, they showing me the cartoon at the carpet. And he described that it's a lion, he's running, he's fighting. So lion is running, so he can see a vivid picture, like a real, alive picture at the carpet. It's a pareidolia, it's a bad sign. That means there was a great intoxication in the brain of this child, and very often these pareidolic illusion will went to the to the alive objects, okay, to the real hallucinations. So if this lion will jump out from the carpet, so he will be in the room, and if a child can see, will see him, that will be a real hallucinations. We also have a very A local, a homemade painter. Over here, thanks God. So these are the main illusions. Now we go to the hallucinations, and here you see the definition of the illusion, definition of the hallucinations. First, and most simple, most recommended for me, for you to understand, and it will help. It's a perception without an object. No object, but people, but person perceives something. There is no person in front of you, but you can see somebody. Nobody's talking to you, but you can hear that somebody's talking to you. That's an object. Other more wise and more interesting and sophisticated definition, it's a Karl Jasper's definition. That's a very famous psychopathologist. Actually, he established psychopathology as part of as a independent scientific unit. That was a Karl Jasper's. He says that the full perception, it's not a distortion or misinterpretation. Hallucinations occurs at the same time as the real perception. So it's inability to distinguish reality from the fantasy. In this case, we have a hallucinations. Well, now I can hear the voices. But it looks like it's not a hallucinations. It looks like a voices. I still can hear this. One of the most common explanation of the hallucination is that a person, as I told before, there was an interruption, inability, he cannot distinguish reality from the fantasy. Well, for example, right now I'm looking at my screen, but at the same time in my head I see the images of my family and my son. He have to be counseling of a doctor right now at this moment. So then I talk to you. I also have these fantasies. I also have these thoughts, imagination process inside of my head. But maybe I can hear some. I can also in my fantasy they talk to doctor saying something for them, and I can fantasize about that. But in mental disorder, in hallucination, in a condition that person experience hallucinations, person can hear that what is a fantasy for him. At the same time, he see the real object. So it occur in a real perception. That's what this is about. That's distinguishing of the hallucination. As I told you, hallucinations, it's a perception coming from within, so from our own fantasy, from the fantasy of the patient. Illusions, they coming from the without. Causes of hallucinations. So what can make people to hallucinate or to have hallucinations? We will follow one by one. Hallucinations are the result of intense emotions. What's here? Any emotions inside of the person can be stronger than his mind, than his psychic, or than his controlling mechanism of his rational thinking. You see that very depressive patients with that person is very depressed, then the condition goes down very deeply, this person very often experience ideas of guilt. Like, I'm guilty in everything in this world, that my grandmother died because I didn't visit her in a hospital in a proper time, for example, like that. That's why these people can think that they are a murderer, for example. It's absolutely not deserved, but depression can make such a things with a person. That's an example. So if person hates himself, he can hear the voices which confirm, which confirm that he think or feel about himself. Die, you don't deserve, you are a dirty, you are a dirt, worthless, I don't know, empty place. They can blame him, and he can hear these voices, short, small voices, because of emotion. Or then the person is scared. For example, let's get back to the example. Then you are trying to pass, and you're going home at 11 o'clock in the night, in the evening, and you pass in the park, and you're full of fear, and you almost sometimes can hear, hey, stop, come here, don't run away. So something like that you can hear, but there was no people who were talking to you. It's because of emotions. People hallucinate because of it. Again, intense fear. Imagine yourself a medieval epidemic of plague. Yes, am I correct? So everybody is scared, and a town is gathering in the main street, in the main square in the town, before the church, and one person say that I can see the Mary Devi. I can see the Holy Mary. I can see her. Wow. He see. Other people can see because of the fear, and they start to hallucinate. That's one of the explanation of these currents, and that's one of the explanation why we cannot see it right now. Also, emotions can be a result of the psychiatric disorder. Here we got an example, and I want you to remember it. It's schizophrenia. Always in schizophrenia we have voices which are comments, actions, and discuss a person. And person can hear these voices inside of his head. Usually they are negative. Negative means they are very hostile, criticizing, non-friendly for the person. Like voices which right now can be in my head. So see, he's talking here, nobody's interested. So he forgot the connection with the reality, and so they can criticize me right now inside of my head. It's a schizophrenic hallucinations, results of suggestion. I told you, somebody can see that, somebody really emotional. This guy can suggest, can activate, can even transfer these hallucinations to other people, especially if these other people is lower than him, if he is a referent person for them. For example, we got a case then, one young lady, she suffered from schizophrenia, and she was experiencing an impact of a special distant lights, or well, she was believing that the administration of the hospital was controlling her thoughts at a distance. So it turns that after some period of time, her mother came and said, please stop to do it to me also, because they was living together with the daughter, and the mother starts to experience the same things. And the daughter, very rare case over such a difficulty, but then you're scared, then you see somebody's running, and you scream that, other people will also see that. Emotions can be because of the damage of the central nervous system. sense organ, eyes, nerves. Hallucinations can be the result of the damage of the distant receptors. For example, in diabetes, these receptors, they are damaged, and sometimes people feel paresthesia, like uncertain and unpleasant sensations. That's a paresthesia. But sometimes people can feel like a bugs getting under the skin and traveling or eating their flesh or something like that. That's in a severe case because of the sensors organs are broken or damaged. Sorry. Hallucinations are the result of some sensory deprivation. First of all, what is sensory deprivation? Sensory deprivation is when stimuli are reduced to minimum for the normal subject. For example, if we put a person in a special chamber which excludes a temperature, impact, voice, noises, smell, or anything, so a person feels nothing, experience no stimuli. So approximately after 2 hours, maybe in 1 hour, he will start to experience hallucinations. Because our perception cannot be switched off for all our life, and it will substitute all the necessary external real object. It will substitute to the internal object in order not to make these area empty, if you let me to say so. So very often people hallucinate then they are isolated from any other external stimulus. So let's move on. Well, yes, obvious. Hallucinations can be just a result of the damage of the central nervous system. That's it. Now, hallucinations also can be classified by the types of individual senses. Auditory hallucination. And we can here distinguish what? Speak if you want to speak. So, auditory hallucinations can be two types. First, they are elementary. This one. They are elementary. It's a simple noises, bells, or some whispers. So it's undifferentiated whispers. We can often meet this stuff in organic damage of the brain. Then the brain are damaged. There can be a short, discrete type of hallucinations. They're not connected. It's just, hey, hello, where are you? Stop. Hey, what is that? Come here, run away, you'll die. Something like that. Simple and undifferentiated, and they go out from outside. That's usually because of these type of hallucination we can meet in people who got a lesion of the brain tissue. But as you see, let's study the hallucinations for the schizophrenia. Yes. Here, these hallucinations are completely organized, and they've been functioning, they've been detected like a person defined them as the voices. So completely organized voices. It's like two people, one person is lives inside of the head of the patient and talk continuously with the lot of sentences, with the continuation, with his speech is organized and consists of the stories, tales, approach. So it's not like a hey, stop here. No, it's a completely full conversation between two persons, let's say. So that's the auditory hallucinations. So let's move on. Sorry. Visual hallucinations. Usually it's visions of object, people, and they can be organized or not so much, but all of them actually it's just because of organic states or so-called acute organic states. In this example, there's small animals, an insect, in a person who been hallucinating or in a delirium, or a person who take cocaine or something like that. In acute organic states. So person can see something right in front of him, and that's should make you should give you a clue that if a person have or has visual hallucinations, it should be turn on your suspicion about the brain damage, and we have to check it. Okay, so that's a visual hallucination. Now move on. Smell or taste hallucinations. Well, usually we can see them in schizophrenia or in a deep, in a deep depression. Of course, sometimes in organic states. For example, in taste, a depressive person can report that the food, the meat is awful. It stinks with the feces or something like that. Well, because you want to spoil me, or you want to poison me, something like that. Touch and tactile, the same things. Again, brain damage or cocaine. Visceral hallucinations. That's an interesting thing. Actually, it should be 7. So let's fix it. Touch. I'm afraid you cannot see the screen, yes?
Yes, sir.
Now you see. So visceral hallucinations. Possible, visceral means internal, but visceral, these terms translated something what happens inside of you. I think you have to know this term. So in visceral hallucinations, patients experience something unpleasant, really unpleasant, something which cannot exist. They can tell you, doctor, I feel like my ren, they are twisted with somebody's hand, and somebody feel like somebody just would divide it into the 2 pieces, will take out some piece of that. Or I feel like a enormously hot iron instrument is being located at the surface of my I don't know, lung, in my heart, or I feel like this, or I feel like a bugs eating my flesh, or like it's some germ inside of my scrotum, or something like that. So it's absolutely impossible experiences which person experience from the outside. Usually the reaction is not so awful like at a real pain or like at the real germs, but person is suffering and we have to help Now, that's maybe main things, but patient's attitude to the hallucinations. And I would like we here to coin two terms. In hallucinations, there can be an insight or there can be no insight. What does it mean that a patient has an insight? Let's start from the things, from the beginning. When patient have no insight, he cannot distinguish or understand or be aware that right now he has hallucinations. So he believes in them like they are real, and we usually say here in our region, he has no critic opinion about hallucinations. So he has no insight. He believes that this exists in reality, and he behaves accordingly with this reality. No insight. That means a danger of unpredictable behaviors. As you see, that happens in a delirium, first of all, or actually it happens then hallucinations are caused by trauma, brain damage, or intoxication. In this case, usually patients experience, a patient do not, or patient has no insight. Insight means eureka. In acute schizophrenia in the beginning, yes, it is so. A person can hear the voices and he can go to the mother and say, can you hear that? They are threatening me. Can you hear that? They want for me to die. They order me to commit a suicide. Wow. But mother can tell, sorry, I cannot hear anybody, and nobody is over here. It's only inside of your head. So in the beginning, in acute schizophrenia, that can be possible that there is no critic. But after some time, after some period of disease, a patient patient learn to distinguish what is real words, what is words only the voices inside of his head. So, and the person, partially, of course, but he understands that only he can hear these voices, other cannot. Some patients go further and they think, if I have a hallucinations, that maybe I have a disease, and that's the main things. Then patient is having insight. In this moment, he understands that yes, I have hallucinations. They don't exist in the reality. And in this case, if patient has an insight, of course, you can see that much more easier to help for him to fight, to cope with these hallucinations. If not, there will be a big problem. Again, in depression, patient can hear voices coming from outside, and the voices they are. Imagine yourself a depressed person. He is tired. He is very, very in a low mood, so it's very easily to make him even more vulnerable. Then he can hear something from outside. Yes, you're worthless, you loser, you shouldn't leave, commit suicide or something like that. So, but these words are short, and the person do not suffer from them, do not fight from them, because he believes that he deserves it. Okay. A patient with depression, yes, often can't hear that somebody is blaming blaming them. No, yes, somebody is blaming them, talking to them. And sometimes European monks was coming. Okay, let's leave it alone. That's about depression and the attitudes. Now go. Pseudo hallucinations. A lot of text, as you see, but I want you to pay attention for the clinical significance of dividing into pseudo hallucinations and true hallucinations is that the pseudo hallucinations, that the pseudo hallucinations are almost always a sign of schizophrenia. I cannot. Okay, pseudo hallucinations, they present in schizophrenia, and true or real hallucinations, they present in some kinds of psychiatric consequences of the brain damage, the trauma, intoxication, or edema. So, how to distinguish one from another? So be a bit patient, and that will be the last slide in our lecture. We have hallucinations or true hallucinations and pseudo hallucinations. Pseudo hallucinations are in a schizophrenia, true hallucinations in a brain damage. So true hallucinations are in objective space. Objective space, that's a space which around me, not inside of me. Pseudo hallucinations is my subjective space, it's my imagination, it's my internal world, my conscience, my mind. Pseudo hallucinations origin from my mind. Actually, nobody can hear the voices which nothing can sound inside of my head. Nothing. Nothing can give a sound inside of my head. Sound can come only from outside. That's a first. So real hallucination, they perceive it via sensory modality from the ears, skin, fingers, eyes. But pseudo hallucination cannot and can. For example, a person can hear not a sound, a person can hear thoughts. Somebody send in thoughts for him, or put into thoughts, ideas. You cannot hear ideas, you can hear the voices which give you an ideas, but not vice versa. So real hallucinations, true hallucinations, they clear, distinct, vivid, and that's why people react from them like alive. As if a big dog will enter in my room right now, a dinosaur, I will scream, I will fight, I will do anything to protect myself, I will react. But pseudo hallucination, then unclear and foggy. So some thoughts, somebody is speaking inside of me unclearly, and I don't sure actually it's a words or thoughts, I don't understand that. So that's a pseudo hallucinations. Wait a second. Wait a second. Лиль, я просто записываю, сейчас, секундочку. Я заканчиваю. Что ж ты, куда мы зашли? People, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Few words.
Aman Bhadwa, yes, sir.
In a true hallucinations, there
Yes,
is no
sir.
outside. People believe in that like
Yes, sir.
true. But in a pseudo hallucinations, people do understand that this is my hallucination, this is okay. So let's finish for today. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, if
No,
there's
sir.
any question, then
Oh, sir.
and I will send the link to
No,
download
sir.
it. See you.